Linebacker Jacob Rodriguez was all over the field yesterday against BYU, finishing with 14 tackles. Also had an interception and a tackle for loss. He's been all over the field all season for Texas Tech. You know, the announcers were talking about this dude being a Heisman finalist. We even saw him hit the Heisman pose after the interception. Very difficult thing to be a Heisman finalist as a linebacker. The last one I remember off the top of my head was Jabril Peppers, who doesn't really count as a linebacker. You know, he's also a kick returner, punt returner, also played on offense for Michigan. But Manti Te'o before that for Notre Dame, more of a true linebacker. But we're going to look at what Jacob Rodriguez did yesterday against BYU. We'll talk about the run stuff. I want to start off with this dude as a pass dropper. The hips are so fluid. The athleticism, you know, they talk a lot about him that he used to play quarterback when he was at Virginia, then transitioned to linebacker. I think you can kind of see that in the pass drops, but you know, this dude is a run defender. The way that he reads, blocking schemes, that's not really what a quarterback does. He does such a good job of that. We'll talk about that later. Yeah, him as a pass dropper, not just his eyes. We're going to see his eyes be really good later. That kind of is what translates from him playing quarterback, but just the hip fluidity. He is all over this corner route from this tight end. That's very impressive. But one thing, if you're playing Texas Tech, obviously two names to know, Romello Height, David Bailey, try to get them out of the game, but do not run outside runs to Jacob Rodriguez's side. Those jet plays, those stretch plays, he does a really good job first reading it. We're going to see this first one's a bit of an easy read, right? All the action is to the side where the ball ends up. That's a bit of an easier read for a linebacker. I'm more impressed by the athleticism for him to get out there. We're going to see a very good read from him in a little bit. Kind of a similar play here. Everything's to his outside. He's just busting ass out there. Really athletic. But this next one, I'm really interested if anybody's an offensive coordinator at the high school level or, they know what they're looking at here. This looks like an influence play, but it's kind of like a read where it looks like the running back's away from the pulling guards here. The action goes away from the pulling guards. It ends up being like an influence play. But I think the read is Bachmeier might pull this, and this kind of becomes quarterback power or whatever. But, this is a great job by Rodriguez. The pulling guards are going away from him. Even the tackle is going away from him. This is a great read by him. Keeping his eyes true, then he doesn't get influenced, right? The point of that play is everybody's pulling that way to the left. He does a good job looking it off, and then the athleticism to make this. Not every linebacker can read this. A lot of them get caught in the wash going that way to the left. Not every linebacker also has the athleticism to get outside and, keep this for a gain or keep this for a loss after they read it. So, that's 3 outside run plays we saw Jacob Rodriguez just, completely erase. First by him reading it. He does a great job of that, and then that athleticism to be a real sideline-to-sideline player, certainly has that. And then had just 14 tackles all over the field. They talked earlier in the game about BYU doesn't have an offense to come back from 14 points. They're trying to run the ball down your throat, and I think Jacob Rodriguez was a major part why they kind of had to get uncomfortable and start throwing the ball more than they wanted to. And then here are the eyes again. They do these drills in the combine all the time where the linebackers are like running all over, and then when you watch it, I'm always like, when do they ever do this in a game? And you pay close enough attention, it does happen. Just great job by him. The athleticism to get over back into the middle of the field. Bachmeier wasn't accounting for him, couldn't account for him, and he ends up making the interception on that play. And then we'll watch this last one here. But yeah, Jacob Rodriguez, great football player. Really excited to see him finish out this season for Texas Tech. Is he going to be in New York for the Heisman ceremony? Me as a defensive guy, I think he deserves it. I don't think he'll end up being there, but that's more because of the position he's playing. Just kind of doesn't get as much love from the voting committee. But you guys let me know what you think about Jacob Rodriguez. Please check out we-draft.com as a place to store all your draft evaluations. We got Romello Height up there, David Bailey as well. So please check that out. Thanks for watching.